Hey y'all, welcome to another powerful, brand new story. I really hope you love it, and if you do, make sure to join the fam by hitting that subscribe button and dropping a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Let's dive in.
The Nevada desert stretched endlessly, a sea of scorched stone and sand glowing under a brutal sun. Jack Morgan had chosen this place for its silence. After years in the military, silence was all he craved. No screams, no orders, no war. Just wind and dust. He lived alone, tucked in a weather-beaten cabin hidden among red rocks. But one afternoon, as the heat shimmered in the distance, the quiet was shattered. A burning streak cut across the sky like a blade of fire. Jack stood still, staring. It wasn't a meteor. Not the way it moved. Too smooth. Too controlled. Something was wrong. Something was falling. The smoke was rising on the horizon before the roar even reached his ears. Whatever it was had crashed hard. Against all logic and every instinct, Jack grabbed his pack and jumped onto his bike. The engine roared to life. He sped across the desert, toward the smoke, toward the unknown. What he found made his breath hitch. A crater. Smoldering. At its center, a sleek, alien craft lay twisted and torn, like a bird with broken wings. It had definitely been piloted. This wasn't debris from space. This was someone, trying to escape. He should have turned back. He should have reported it. But then he saw her. Amid the wreckage, barely conscious, lay a woman. Or something like one. Her skin shimmered with silver tones, her limbs slender, graceful, but bruised and bloodied. Her hair, white as bone, spilled over her shoulders. She was beautiful in a way that felt ancient and terrifying. He slid into the crater, knees crunching on broken metal. She flinched. Her violet eyes blinked open, just for a second, and Jack felt something twist in his chest. Fear. Pain. Hope. He whispered, "You're going to be okay." He wrapped his jacket around her and lifted her gently. She was impossibly light. As he carried her out of the crater, he kept scanning the skies. Someone had left her here, which meant they might be coming back. He took her to his cabin, laid her gently on a cot in his tent, and got to work. Her wounds pulsed with strange light. His first aid kit felt useless. But he cleaned what he could, patched what might have been burns, and gave her sips of water. She responded weakly. It was a start. Night fell. The desert cooled. He sat by her side, watching her shallow breaths. There was no plan. No sense in what he'd done. Just a gut feeling, she needed help. And he couldn't walk away. By morning, she stirred. He froze as her eyes locked on his. She tried to rise but winced in pain. "Easy," he said softly. "You're safe." Her voice was a whisper, strange and musical. "Human." He gave a nod. "Yeah. Name's Jack. You crashed. I found you." She studied him, searching for threat. Then, after a long moment, "You saved me. Wasn't really a choice," he muttered with a smile. She winced again. "You shouldn't have. It's dangerous. For you." He shrugged. "Danger doesn't scare me much." She hesitated, then spoke more clearly. "My name is Ava Lennox, daughter of High Chancellor Lennox, ruler of the Galactic Confederacy. I disobeyed him. I stood against him. So he branded me a traitor. Sent assassins. I escaped. But not far." Jack blinked. "So you're a princess?" "I was," she said bitterly. "Not anymore." He took a deep breath, ran a hand through his dust-covered hair. "Well, Princess Ava, looks like you're stuck with me." Despite the pain, she smiled faintly. As the days passed, she healed faster than any human could. Her wounds closed with shimmering scars. Her strength returned. Jack fashioned clothes from spare fabric, helped her walk again. She told him stories of galaxies ruled by tyrants, of empires built on silence and fear. She had spoken out, stood for justice. Her reward was exile and death. Jack shared his own past. The war. The friends he lost. The guilt he carried. They trained together in the mornings. Her alien reflexes, his military discipline. She was agile, precise. He was relentless. Their bond deepened with every session, every meal, every silence they shared under the desert stars. Then came the drone. Jack spotted it first, a faint shimmer in the sky. Ava confirmed it with dread in her eyes. They found me. They fortified the cabin. Traps. Sand camouflage. A makeshift radar. When the strike team came, they were ready. It was chaos. Explosions lit the night. Plasma fire tore through rock. Jack fought with precision, Ava with fury. They covered each other, protected each other. The first wave fell. But more were coming. Then came the ship. Massive. Black as night. Hovering like a predator. We can't win this, Jack said through gritted teeth. Then we don't win, Ava replied. We make them bleed. They lured the soldiers into the canyon. Jack had rigged fuel barrels with charges. One spark. A deafening explosion. Fire swallowed the sky. The ship faltered, spiraled, and crashed in the distance. Smoke and silence. They stood among the wreckage, bloodied and breathless. You okay? He asked. She nodded, eyes shining. Thanks to you. He looked at her, this strange being from a distant star, and felt something stir. What now? She asked. Jack looked up at the sky, stars blinking into view. Now we stop running. Now we fight. Ava took his hand. Together. He squeezed it gently. Always. The desert wind howled around them, carrying ash and promise. Far above, more stars began to move. The war was coming. But so were they. A rebel princess, and the soldier who saved her. And the universe would never be the same. The sun was rising behind the jagged ridges of the Nevada hills when Tom Carter packed the essentials. Food, tools, weapons, whatever might give them a fighting chance. Sarah leaned against the doorway of the cabin, her silver blonde hair braided back, the faint violet hue of her skin catching the morning light. She had healed remarkably fast, but Tom could see the tightness in her posture. She was bracing for war. They'll send more, she said quietly. They never stop with one wave. My father commands a fleet that spans systems. Tom nodded, checking the chamber of his rifle. Then we keep moving. Pick our battles. Make it hard for them. Sarah looked at him, eyes narrowing. You're not afraid, are you? I've seen worse, he said. But this time, I've got a reason to fight. Her lips twitched into a subtle smile, but it faded quickly. I wasn't supposed to survive that crash. They wanted to make an example of me. Let them come, Tom replied. We'll give them something to remember. By noon, they were deep in the desert, traveling through a narrow ravine lined with sun-bleached stone. Sarah led the way, scanning the skies. She had a small, circular device, a leftover from her ship's wreckage, that detected movement in orbit. When it buzzed faintly, she stopped cold. They're tracking us, she said, voice low. A scout beacon passed overhead. We have 2 hours, maybe less. Then we set a trap, Tom said. We hit them first. They chose a high ridge, overlooking a wide basin where the scout ship was likely to land. Tom knew the terrain. He trained in places like this. He set tripwires, buried explosive charges, and built a decoy fire in the open below. Meanwhile, Sarah was in her element. She moved with precision, adjusting the alien tech she had salvaged. She linked one of her crystalline power cells to Tom's remote detonator, enhancing the blast radius. Together, they were a fusion of two worlds, human instinct and alien intellect. When the scout ship descended, it came fast and quiet, a sleek wedge of black metal humming with energy. It touched down softly in the basin, its engines barely stirring the dust. From its underbelly, a dozen soldiers emerged, tall, armored in black and gold, their weapons pulsing with plasma. They moved in formation, converging on the decoy fire. Tom waited until the last one passed the tripwire. He clicked the remote. The explosion roared through the canyon, sending a wall of flame into the sky. Half the squad was vaporized instantly. The rest scrambled, but Sarah was already on the move, sliding down the ridge with twin plasma blades ignited in her hands. She was a blur of motion, cutting, leaping, disarming. Tom joined her from the opposite flank, rifle bucking in his hands as he picked off stragglers. It was over in minutes. Breathing heavily, Sarah wiped blood from her cheek. "We can't do this forever." Tom nodded grimly. "No. But we can buy time. Make it harder for them to hunt us." She looked at the smoking wreck of the scout ship. "We need to send a message." Tom raised an eyebrow. "To who?" "To the galaxy," she said. "To the people my father has silenced. If they know I'm alive, they might rise." Tom stared at her, something shifting in his eyes. "You don't just want to survive. I want to fight back," Sarah said. "And I want them to know I'm not afraid." They scavenged the ship's transmitter, dragged it to the top of the ridge, and rigged it to broadcast across multiple channels, civilian and military. Sarah stood before it, face hard with resolve. "This is Princess Seraphina Zeth of the Galactic Confederacy," she said into the mic. "I was branded a traitor for refusing to obey my father's tyranny. But I am alive, and I am not alone." Tom stood behind her, rifle slung over his shoulder. "To those who suffer under the Confederacy," Sarah continued, "know this, the resistance is not dead. We are here. We will fight. And we will not stop until the stars are free." She ended the transmission. Tom whistled low. That'll get his attention. Sarah exhaled slowly. "Good. I want him to know I'm coming." That night, they camped near a dried-up riverbed. Tom watched the stars, wondering how many of them were under the Confederacy's grip. He glanced at Sarah, who sat sharpening her blades in the firelight. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Open rebellion?" "I've never been more sure," she said. Tom nodded. "Then I'm with you." Her eyes met his. "Why?" "You could walk away." "I could," he said. "But I won't. You were thrown away by your own people. I know what that feels like." She was quiet for a moment. "Then we fight together." And so they did. Over the weeks that followed, Sarah and Tom became more than fugitives. They became a symbol. Their signal had reached ears across the galaxy. Small rebel cells began to emerge, emboldened by the princess's survival. But with hope came danger. The Confederacy deployed assassins. Sarah survived a poisoning attempt in a mining town on Mars Ridge. Tom barely escaped a bounty hunter ambush in the canyons of Triton 9. The enemy was closing in, but so was their rebellion. In the hidden tunnels of a moon base near Saturn, they met with the leaders of the rebel factions. Sarah, draped in a long coat and bearing the mark of House Zeth burned into her shoulder, stood before them. "We cannot wait for the Confederacy to crumble on its own," she told them. "We must strike first. We must cut off the head of the beast." They nodded, united. The plan was simple but dangerous. The Confederacy's command station, Crown Spire, orbited a dead planet called Verax Prime. It was heavily guarded, impenetrable. Or so they thought. With the help of former engineers and defected soldiers, they built a stealth ship, codenamed Echo Fawn. Fast, invisible to sensors, and armed to the teeth. Tom stood beside Sarah in the cockpit as the planet loomed ahead. "Once we start this, there's no going back." "There never was," she said. They launched the assault at dawn. Echo Fawn pierced the Crown Spire's defenses like a dagger. Explosions tore through the station as rebel fighters poured in behind them. Tom fought like a man possessed, clearing corridors and laying down fire. Sarah led the charge to the throne chamber, cutting down elite guards as alarms screamed overhead. And then, finally, they faced him, High Chancellor Varric Zeth, her father, cloaked in regal black, his expression a storm of fury and disdain. "You dare return here?" he snarled. "After everything?" Sarah stepped forward. I came to finish what I started. Varek laughed coldly. You'll die like all rebels. But she didn't give him the chance. With a single, fluid motion, she launched her blade forward, piercing the control panel beside him. Systems collapsed. The power grid surged. Tom threw a detonator into the chamber and pulled her back. Time to go! They escaped as Crown Spire erupted in a fireball, the light of rebellion flaring across the stars. On a quiet planet days later, Sarah and Tom stood on a hill overlooking a rebel camp, now filled with laughter, life, and freedom. We did it, Tom said. Sarah nodded, resting her head against his shoulder. We started something that can't be stopped. He looked at her, at the way the wind played through her hair. Where do we go now? She smiled softly. Anywhere. Everywhere. As long as they were together, they would face the galaxy side by side. The days following the attack were restless. Tom and Sarah barely slept, their senses heightened, always half expecting another drop ship to appear on the horizon. The quiet moments between them grew heavier, but also more meaningful, each one laced with the understanding that they might not have many left. One night, as the fire crackled low and the stars stretched endlessly above them, Sarah traced her fingers over a holographic projection. A flickering star map projected from a salvaged piece of her ship's core. Tom watched her, his brow furrowed. What are you looking for? He asked. She didn't look away. Coordinates. There's a place I have to reach, before they do. Tom knelt beside her. What kind of place? A facility, she said, voice barely audible. Hidden deep in a dead zone of the galaxy. My father's empire used it to develop forbidden technologies. It's where they built the Stellar Reaper. Tom's stomach twisted at the name. She had mentioned it in passing before, but only now did her tone carry the gravity of the threat. He's going to use it, she said, eyes reflecting the stars. Not just to crush rebellion, but to erase entire worlds. Tom leaned back, the silence hanging heavy. And you think we can stop it? Sarah finally turned to him. We have to. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a plan. It was a vow. They spent the next week rebuilding. From the wreckage of the Confederate drop ship, they cobbled together a working engine core and retrofitted it into the remains of Sarah's original craft. It was crude, pieced together with mismatched alloys and human tools, but it would fly. The day they launched was windless and eerily still. The ship rose from the desert floor with a grating roar, the heat from the engines turning the sand beneath into shimmering glass. Tom took one last look at the world that had been his quiet refuge, then stepped inside the ship beside Sarah. Whatever lay ahead, Earth was no longer home. The journey through space was brutal. They kept to shadow lanes, uncharted routes used by smugglers and exiles. They avoided beacon space, where Confederate cruisers scanned for fugitives. Sarah taught Tom how to mask the ship's energy signature. Tom taught her how to shoot with precision, even under stress. They learned each other's rhythms like a language. Somewhere along the outer rim of the Nerix belt, they encountered a blockade. 3 Confederate drones locked onto them before Sarah could even finish her course correction. Alarms screamed through the cockpit. Weapons? Tom barked. Offline. We have to run. Sarah snapped, fingers flying over the controls. They dove into the asteroid field, the ship groaning under the strain. Shards of rock spun by like knives. One of the drones clipped a hull fin. Flames burst from the side panel, but they kept going. Navigation's down, Tom shouted. We're flying blind. Trust me, Sarah said. And he did. They escaped by the skin of their teeth, the drones lost in the rock maze behind them. When the quiet returned, Tom sat back in the co-pilot chair, soaked in sweat. I hope wherever we're going, he muttered. It's worth it. Sarah didn't answer. She just stared ahead. The planet was gray. Featureless. Dead. Once, perhaps, it had thrived, now it was a skeleton. Their ship landed in a long-forgotten valley, its entrance hidden beneath a collapsed communications array. Sarah led the way down, deeper into the dark. Tom followed her through winding corridors that still pulsed with residual power. Lights flickered like dying stars. The air was stale, dry with age. At the heart of the compound, they found it. A chamber the size of a stadium, filled with hanging cores, each one glowing with a sickly blue light. The Stellar Reaper seed tech. Hundreds of them. Tom's blood ran cold. All of these prototypes, Sarah said. My father perfected one. It's already en route to the core worlds. She moved to the control panel, her hands trembling slightly. If I can trigger a self-destruct sequence, I can destroy this site. But we'll only get one shot. Do it. She worked fast. Tom stood guard, rifle raised, eyes flicking over every corner of the room. Too quiet. Too easy. And then came the footsteps. Boots on metal. Dozens of them. Sarah looked up, eyes wide. They followed us. The door exploded inward. Confederate soldiers poured through, masked, armed, ruthless. Tom opened fire, dropping two before they even hit the floor. Sarah ducked behind the console, shouting coordinates to the control AI. A grenade rolled across the floor toward her. Tom didn't think. He lunged, grabbing it, hurling it back. The blast rattled the room, sending sparks raining down. Sarah slammed her hand on the console. Sequence initiated! A countdown began. 60 seconds. Get to the ship! She screamed. They ran, shoulder to shoulder, as chaos erupted behind them. The facility rumbled. Pipes burst. Alarms howled. Soldiers gave chase, but Tom and Sarah were fast, driven by pure survival. 40 seconds. They reached the hangar just as their ship auto-deployed its ramp. Tom dove in, pulling Sarah behind him. 20 seconds. The engines roared. Fire licked at the doorway as they lifted off. 10 seconds. They hit orbit. The planet shrank behind them. Then, it vanished. A shockwave tore through space, obliterating everything. The Stellar Reaper lab was gone. They drifted in silence, the ship's systems stabilizing. Sarah sat beside Tom, her body shaking, not from fear, but release. It's not over, she said. There's still one Reaper left. Tom reached over, took her hand. Then we finish it. She looked at him, something deeper than gratitude in her eyes. We will. In the days that followed, they planned. They would have to infiltrate a high-security vessel. Face Sarah's father, Emperor Kale, himself. The man who had ordered her death. The man who now threatened 1,000 worlds. They trained harder. Rewired the ship with cloaking panels. Built an EMP disruptor that could short out starship controls. Tom modified his rifle for plasma rounds. Sarah honed her blade craft until she could slice a kin in half midair. By the time they reached the coordinates of the Emperor's fleet, they weren't fugitives anymore. They were a strike team. The Emperor's ship was a floating palace, obsidian black, shaped like a dagger, surrounded by smaller cruisers. They snuck aboard through the waste shaft of a maintenance cruiser, crawled through ducts, bypassed security fields, and entered the heart of the throne room. Kale was waiting. He stood tall, robed in silver, his expression unreadable. Sarah, he said, you disappoint me. She didn't flinch. You disgrace the galaxy. His eyes flicked to Tom. And you, a human. She chose well. Tom raised his weapon. Time's up. Guards rushed in. The fight was brutal. Sarah moved like lightning, her blades dancing. Tom fired with deadly accuracy. Every shot counted. The Emperor fought too, his strength augmented by ancient tech. But together, they overwhelmed him. At the end, Kale lay broken. Sarah stood over him. This is for every world you burned. She pressed the disruptor core into his chest. It pulsed, then silenced. The Reaper's command codes were wiped. Tom and Sarah fled before the fleet could respond. They vanished into deep space, ghosts to the empire they had defied. No longer hunted. No longer alone. On a quiet moon orbiting a green-blue planet, They built a new home. A place for outcasts, survivors, rebels. They had earned peace. But they would never forget the fire. And if the stars ever cried out again, they would answer. Together,